All right.
All right, I'm recording.
All right. Welcome back to the podcast. We had a fascinating guest on today. Um, absolutely. We were privileged to be able to speak to him. Mike, you want to
Yeah. So
describe?
today we talked to Ruben Sevilla, who's a journalist in Venezuela right now. He for the past year or so has been covering demonstrations that have been going on in the country. They've been having food shortages and a lot of political upheaval. So we were lucky enough to get Ruben to join us on the podcast from Caracas, Venezuela, where he went over to a friend's house because he doesn't have any internet right now because of things are such a mess right now. But it sounded like they were hanging out at the friend's house, maybe watching a soccer game during the day. So it gets a little loud at some points, but it's really interesting. We kind of get into the history of Venezuela, why things are turning for the worse there right now, and he gives us a lot of details. It's a really interesting and exciting conversation, especially to hear his perspective as a journalist on the streets there. There's a few stories he tells where he was kind of fearful for his own life, and certain times where him or a friend of his got their cameras or memory cards wiped, erased, or stolen. So, yeah, I thought it was a good talk, and a couple times he kind of gets really detailed, and some of the things were easy to understand and follow, and I think he did a good job of trying to give us a good context for what's going on there now. So
Yeah.
I think if you listen to the whole conversation, it's vastly interesting. There's a few times where he gave a lot of information, so I think it's worth a listen, and it was a good talk.
Yeah, and how when he starts off, you'll notice that he jumps right into the some detail, and so I just to provide some context, he starts off by describing the history of Venezuela, and I know it's not a subject that we all follow closely, so just for everybody to understand, Venezuela was actually quite a prosperous country for a long time. They're rich in oil, so in the early 50s they were they're actually one of the most prosperous economies in South America. But when a man named Hugo Chavez took reign in the late 90s, he really forcefully implemented a socialism government and in a socialism economy, where I think it's easy to say that he was a dictator, and he wanted to be. And you'll hear Ruben start describing Hugo as this guy who wanted to be loved and liked so much, and branded himself as this guy that was helping the poor. And that to me was just so fascinating, because it's exactly what Mike and I talk about often. And this is real. This is now. This is happening right now. And so we try to talk to Ruben about more about so what he thinks about socialism and American culture. So I think that keep in mind that that he's there every day reporting, and he's born and raised in Venezuela, so he does a great job talking about that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed as much as we did.
Yeah, it was great. It was pretty good. Pretty good.
All right, cue the music.
Got it. Here we go. Ruben Sevilla. Oh, and one last thing. His Instagram is very, very good, very interesting. I think it's just at Ruben Sevilla, which is RubenSevilla. We'll put the link in the description, and check it out because it's pretty amazing stuff. All right.
Duh.
Music. Duh. What is right and wrong?
Duh.
What is good and bad?
I always refer to myself as a contrarian.
The search for common sense in the defense of free speech.
Duh.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Very nice, and you?
Good. Oh yeah, that sounds a lot better.
Yeah, it sounds perfect. Look at where I'm standing.
Oh my God.
Look at this beauty, man.
Wow.
Yeah, Caracas is awesome. Yeah.
Holy cow. Where are you right now? Where are you staying?
Now I'm at some friends. We were making some hamburgers and then we ate. But yeah, I live here, like not here, but at my place.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Michael, as you know, and this is Tommy.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you, Tommy. Nice to meet you, Michael.
Yeah, you too.
I'm Ruben.
How's your toe doing? I know you heard it a couple weeks back.
Oh yeah. Right now it's fine. Yeah. I had 21 days of rest. I couldn't like go out to the streets. I couldn't walk normally. But yeah, it was some stupid accident in the motorbike on the motorbike.
Yeah. How did it happen? Were you the only one on the bike?
No. We have something called here called moto taxis.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like motorcycle drivers who rent their bikes as taxis. So to work when you know, fuck, in the streets here they do some like road blockades as a method of protest. And those days we have to go all over the city with the bike, just like taking pictures of the blockades, taking pictures of people that are like participating in the activity, making videos, and of course when there are like clashes between the security forces and the demonstrators. But the thing is, the road was blocked, and we were like driving on the walkway, and there were like some things made out of cement on the sideway, and I just like I had my foot like, I don't know, like somehow out of the bike.
Yeah.
And in some moment, the guy just drove too near to these things, and well, I just like kicked it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was very painful.
That's rough. Hey, Ruben, it's a little hard to hear you with the dogs in the background. I don't know if there's another spot you can go, but
yeah. Let me go to another.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Place.
Cool.
So, I guess you have questions.
Yeah.
A lot, hopefully.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Tommy and I were excited to have you on because, Ricardo told us that you'd be willing to talk, and I've been following your Instagram feed for a little while now, just amazed at what's going on, and your pictures are really good too. And
Thank you.
Yeah. So we wanted to invite you on and ask you about what's going on in Venezuela right now, because first of all, I'm really curious about it, and secondly, I don't think a lot of people in the United States it's really on their radar. I think it's definitely in the news here from time to time, but so maybe just start off by introducing yourself and telling us what you're doing in Venezuela right now and what's going on in the country.
Well, hi. My name is Ruben Sevilla, and I'm a multimedia reporter. I basically take pictures, make videos, and make live streamings for a news channel, for an international news channel called NTN 24. Our channel is in several countries in Latin America, and Venezuela is one of them. As you know, since the 1998, we've had kind of socialist government. In 1998 was ex-president Hugo Chavez elected, and the first thing he did was changing the constitution. He proposed to make a new constitution. It was voted and it passed. So we have a new constitution from 1999. From that day, Chavez started taking like populist policies. He started to give a lot of money to poor people. He started to create a lot of like help programs for poor people, giving them housing, giving them things for their households. For example, freezers, ovens, cooking, a lot of stuff, like a very affordable prices. So people loved him a lot. He also used a lot of populism. He wanted the people to see him as the savior of the people. But this all turned out to be wrong because his economical policies were incorrect. So it launched our country into an downward spiral in which we are
Ruben.
now.
Ruben, sorry, can you said that his policies were incorrect?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I'm no one to say what the correct policies are, but if his policies were correct, we wouldn't be in the problem we are now. Right now, yeah. He died, and he named a successor, and this guy is Nicolas Maduro. He's I don't want to talk shit, but he's not as prepared as he should be to be a president. So, well, Maduro took also some incorrect policies, and the result of that is that our economy now is on bankruptcy. They asked the international community for a lot of loans, and that is so. Let me find the words. It's so bad what happened that not even the people from the Venezuelan Congress know exactly how much money Venezuela owes to the other countries, because there are several loans that they asked that they didn't tell anybody. And for example, we owe a lot of money to China, a lot of money to Russia, a lot of money to Iran.
Yeah.
And the government have never been like crystal clear with the loans they take. And since the last elections, wait a second. Mira, las parlamentarias fueron en 2015, ¿no? Ajá, sí, sí. Ajá. The last election, there were the parliamentary elections for a Congress. the opposition party won approximately 90%, 90% of the seats. Before that, there were the last Congress elections were in 2005, in which Venezuelan opposition called for abstention, and the results were that the Congress was mostly occupied by the Officialist Party, that changed in 2015, and since 2015. That the Congress is opposition led. The people want the country haven't taken any more loans because that's a duty of the Congress to approve or not the loans that the president or some officials ask for.
Yeah.
So the economical decisions that this government have made led Venezuela to a serious economic crisis with food shortages, energy shortages, water shortages, and all kinds of infrastructure. I don't know, problems.
Yeah. So how long have you been covering what's going on there now? And when did these problems really become a big deal for daily life there?
Actually, it became a big deal for daily life, like since last year, that food, water, and energy shortages became a lot more common. And this year in April, people started to get mad, like in other occasions. For example, in 2014 and 2007 or 2009, if I'm correct, there were some demonstrations against the government. Those and also with clashes with the security forces, but everything stayed like normal.
Yeah.
This year, the government Maduro's government wanted to implement or create a new constitution, and even officialist officialist followers were against this new constitution. And
so before we get into that, Ruben, you mentioned in this past April, right? That's what like.
I was going there.
Okay, go ahead.
So people started to hear about this new constitution and started to hear about the new proposals for the new constitution, and people said, "Yeah, I don't like this. We have to change this somehow." So the opposition started calling for marches, for demonstrations, and a lot of people went to the streets. A lot. It started. The first demonstration this year was. Let me check with my friends. Mira, la primera marcha de este año fue que sí, el primero. The first one was the 1st of April, and since that day until like the last days of July, there were approximately like 3 or 4 demonstrations per week in every city in Venezuela.
Wow.
Can you talk about what was referred to as the mother of all marches?
The mother of all marches.
Yeah.
There were like 2 or 3 marches that were called not the mother, but were called like big marches that they should have the majority of people. But
well,
I don't know.
There's one that made like international news. That was April 19th, where a lot of people died. It got very violent.
That was my first day working for this news channel.
Wow.
Yeah. I went to the street several times, like 2 or 3 times, to take pictures before that, and then I got hired, and I started to work in April 19th. This march had like 15 starting points all over Caracas. Caracas is the capital of Venezuela, and it was very intense because the points starting in the east were somehow allowed to be people were allowed to concentrate in those points, but in the points on the west of Caracas, people, when they were starting to gather and when they were starting to I don't know, uh, yeah, gather and start to get crowded, the police would just pass along and like stand there with their shields, and so people would feel like threatened.
Yeah.
That day I started in a western county uh, called El Paraíso. In El Paraíso, people were cállense. People were gathering at 2 points, one in front of a mall and one in front of a bridge, and these 2 points were near the highway. Uh, in this location, there are 3 bridges that crosses all the highway to the other side, and the demonstrators hoped to use these bridges to get to the highway and to march along the highway uh, to the finish point. But the thing was that the government placed this. Mira, ¿cómo se dice antimotín en inglés? Riot. Sí. With riot gear on the bridges and some military vehicles. When people started to march towards them, like people were just uh, chanting and waving flags and just like crying for freedom.
Right.
But the police just started shooting gas bombs at them, at us actually. That day was the first day I used ever in my life a helmet, an armored vest.
Yeah.
That day I was hit 2 times by gas bombs in my vest. I was pretty scared actually, but then people started to go back and like organize themselves. They looked for glass bottles. They looked for stones, and they started throwing stones and throwing like Molotov cocktails to the officers. But the officers had like the upper hand. Obviously, they had an armored vehicle. They had shields. They had helmets. They had gas masks. But people didn't have any of this. People just had their will and their hands and their stones. And well, like any other of these demonstrations this year, people were repressed, very, very, very bad. Uh, that day, we were at 2 of these bridges, uh, sending a live transmission, and then we had to take take refuge in one of the buildings nearby. And when we came out, because we saw some other press people uh, walking the streets, by that moment there were no more demonstrators on the street. There were just National Guard and Bolivarian National Guard and Bolivarian National Police. And those were the only ones in the street, besides us as press. In every country, the press has like the right to communicate and to transmit everything that's happening.
Right.
But in Venezuela, there is a problem because the government don't want the world to know what's happening, what's
Right.
actually happening.
Right.
And so military officers came at us, asked about our credentials, and we just showed them. It was okay, but then they told us to just flee, and we asked why, but they just left us hanging and left. Then we started hearing like a lot of motorbikes, and there was like, okay, this is weird. Actually, we were with two Chilean reporters and one guy who is a freelancer from Ireland. Yeah, and we know Venezuela. We know what happens when we start hearing these a lot of motorbikes, and we say, "Oh, this must be the collectives." The collectives are like armed guerrilla groups by the government, by the way, that just they take care that people in poor zones don't demonstrate. For example, there are like these bags of food that the government uh, delivers at a very reasonable price, and these are called claps. And in these claps are delivered in the poorest places in Venezuela. And these claps are delivered by the collectives. If, for example, you say something bad about the government, the collectives say, okay, we don't give any clap to you. If you are an elect oppositor, they won't give the food to you either.
So these groups are essentially like hired by the government, but they're not officially government.
Exactly.
So that way the government can have the deniability that they hired them, and if there's violence, then, yeah. So like it's not the police or the military that's committing these acts. It's the government can say, no, that's not us. That's just colectivos.
That was at the beginning. At the beginning, it was just the colectivos.
Right.
And they are not like properly hired.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked with several and with people who know some of them, and they have told me they receive an amount of money monthly, but it's not actually coming from the government, but coming from somewhere else. It's not like they are in the government's payroll. They are in someone else's payroll.
Okay.
So we know they are like hired from the government, but it's not officially so.
Okay.
So it's the biggest problem about these gangs, to say like that, it's that they are armed and they harm people. That day, the 19th of April, the two Chileans fled, and the Irish guy and my partner, we were left alone, and the Irish guy, like, he didn't feel the danger as we felt it. So when we started hearing the motorbikes, we just started looking for somewhere to hide, for somewhere to just dug down a little. And when we saw them at first, we started running and got into a building. But the Irish guy didn't have so luck. Wasn't so lucky, the Irish guy. And well, he told us afterwards that when the guys surrounded him, they put like 5 pistols on his belly and started asking him for whom was he working for, what was he doing there, he doing in Venezuela if he's not Venezuelan, and they robbed his camera and tried to ask him if he had a cell phone. He had his cell phone inside a hidden pocket in his vest, so he didn't give it. but they took the camera and left him like there for 15 minutes or so, and afterwards like the leader of the collective of those collectivos came and said, we are not thieves, we are socialists, and he gave him the camera back, but without the SD memory.
So, is this all an aftermath of Hugo Chavez? And
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, it was Hugo Chavez, the one who created the collectivos, the one who armed them, and the one who started like organizing them.
Okay.
But I think the problem is not only the collectivos. The problem is everything, because at first casualties. Let me talk to you about the protests, and not so much about the collectivos, and then we come back. Um, the okay, how can I start? In every march, in every opposition demonstration, there were two sides of the story. The side the opposition wanted to talk about, and the side the officials wanted to talk about. For opposition leaders and for the opposition party, the demonstration was to get some to get these things.
So,
Wait,
Ruben, yeah, is the opposition party, are they more conservative leaning?
Yes and no. The opposition party now is conformed by all the opposition parties that existed before.
Okay.
But they joined to stand against the government that is like that is a very powerful
Right.
institute.
But like their goals, what are their goals?
Okay, their goals right now is the destitution of Nicolas Maduro's government, the release of all the political
Prisoners?
of all the political prisoners. There are a lot of students there, and the restitution of the constitutional order, because with this national with this new constitution they want to make, it's not guaranteed the constitutional order that was in the previous constitution.
Okay.
So the opposition party is now the majority of the parties that are in there are leftist, but it's like center left, and there are some center right, but in Venezuela there are not like absolutely right or absolutely leftist parties.
Okay.
We are all kind of centered.
Okay.
If am I explaining myself?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I'm curious.
Okay.
I'm curious why. I don't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to ask how you got into being a multimedia journalist, and why, and what keeps you going out on the streets to cover this every day.
Because when you are in the streets, and when you in 2014, I wasn't a reporter, I was a demonstrator, and I saw everything that the police, everything that the army made to repress the demonstrations, and how they broke like thousand civil rights, how they just punished the people for not agreeing with the government, and I thought there was very unjust. That was very unfair.
Yeah.
Like I didn't like it. And two 2 days in a row, I was very close to get arrested. So I said, okay, I'm gonna stop right now, and I'm gonna like just hope everything's for the best.
Yeah.
Then everything cooled down. The opposition negotiated with the government, and everything went fine, just fine. But the economical crisis staggered, and the social crisis staggered, and this year again, people started going to the streets because people didn't want to feel hunger anymore. People didn't want to have this nonsense exchange control. Let me make some parentheses here, real quick. In U.S., you might not understand pretty well what I'm about to say, but we cannot buy any other currency when we want to, or the amount we want to, or we have to basically ask permission for the government to buy the currency, and the government make the currency available to us, and we can buy it. But that is because they created an exchange control, and this exchange control is basically created to maintain the dollar prices. As Bolivar is Venezuelan currency, and as Bolivar is weaker than the dollar, the government wanted to, I don't know, somehow trick the economy to keep the Bolivar on the same rate, exchange rate, forever.
Okay.
So,
And
Ruben,
so
just to clarify for our listeners, I mean, I want to kind of paraphrase some stuff you said, because
okay.
Venezuela, like in the 1950s, had a very strong economy.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that I just want to clarify that you're saying since the implementation of a more socialistic economy is what led to the downfall. Would you attribute it to anything else, or is it primarily the socialism?
Like socialism involves many factors. One of these factors is the currency exchange control. At the beginning, in the 2001, mira, el control de cambio lo pusieron en el 2001 o el 2002. Chila, el control de cambio lo pusieron en el 2001 o el 2002. No sabe. Well, at the beginning of this millennium, they started with the currency exchange control, and people were allowed to buy. I think when they traveled, they were allowed to buy $10,000 that were at a rate of 1.3 bolivars per dollar, and I think it was like $8,000 electronically. Like you can make purchases for $8,000 via internet, but some years afterwards, they reduced the travelers' rate. How can I say it? ¿Cómo se dice una cuota o algo así? No. The dollars the travelers could buy were reduced to 5,000, and the dollars people were able to use in internet purchases were reduced to 3,000. Okay, right now.
Do you think that's what made Chavez rich?
No, that's other point that we have to take. This is not what made Chavez rich, but it's a tool that helped him make a lot of tricky businesses.
Gotcha. Okay, go on.
Okay, so it started with a Bolivar, a dollar at a 1.3 bolivars rate. Okay, and the second they implemented the currency exchange control, a black market was starting to grow.
Right.
A black market for international currencies, dollars, euros, and other currencies, but basically dollars and euros. Right now, remember this number: 1.3 bolivars for $1 at the beginning of Chavez's period. Now, at the middle of Maduro's period, the official exchange rate for bolivars is like 6 to 800 bolivars per dollar,
Oh my God.
like an 800% of inflation. But in the black market, the dollar right now is at 15,000 bolivars.
Wow.
And as the people don't have access to like cheap dollars, to say like that,
Yeah.
they have to go to the black market and purchase there.
So in other words, this currency restriction, it's kind of an attempt to control the Venezuelan economy and the Venezuelan people.
This restriction was what started the declination of Venezuelan economy.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it opened the doors for a lot of corruption.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you are a government contractor, you can say, okay, I will buy you, I don't know, materials for $100,000. Okay, how many is that in bolivars? At the official exchange rate. Oh, it's, I don't know, 600,000 bolivars. Okay, good. They buy the dollars at the official exchange rate. Then, when they have the dollars, they sell it at black markets rate. And when they have the thousands of bolivars from this black market sale, they buy the supplies they need, and with the rest in bolivars, they buy dollars again from the official rate.
Right. So it's artificial
because they
prices.
have the context.
Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of people with contacts in the government were able to gain contracts with them, and
then they just got rich.
I just started to get rich with all of our money.
Okay, wow. Ruben, let me ask you, have you ever been to the United States?
Yeah, 3 times.
And you stayed for a long time, or were you visiting?
First time I stayed like 2 weeks, the second time 2 months, and the third time 3 months.
Oh, okay. Cool. I think one thing that we're kind of interested in, especially with Venezuela, I don't know if you know much about what it's like for the colleges here in the United States. Oh, hold on, I'll wait a second. Okay. Anyways, so I don't know if you know much about what it's like for universities here in the United States, but occasionally we will have people who say, like, students in the United States who say that they want socialism and that socialism is the thing that will always work. And what's always interested me and what interests Tommy, I think, too, is every time something goes wrong in a socialist country, whether it's the Soviet Union or it's Cuba or now it's Venezuela, then people always say, oh, no, that's not socialism. That's not real socialism. So I'm curious about your perspective in Venezuela. Do you share that opinion with those people, or do you think that this is how socialism always turns out?
Well, socialism is beautiful in paper.
Yeah.
Socialism like evokes a right of equality for all the people.
Right.
This is my personal opinion about what's happening in Venezuela and how they want to implement socialism here, and it's something I think because when I lived in Germany and I spoke from people from East Germany, they told me they could find all their food and all their housing needs and all their basic needs were covered very cheap because the government used to um, uh, subsidiate.
Yeah,
Does that
subsidize.
word even exist?
Yeah, subsidize.
Sorry? Yeah, the government used to subsidize food and everything, and that's why the USSR went down because they subsidized everything.
Yeah.
And in Venezuela, they started to do the same. They started to subsidize everything. They started to subsidize currency. They started to subsidize power. They started to subsidize water. They started to subsidize food. So at one point, they said like, this is the fair price for this item, and all the basic items, for example, in food, had a fair price. They called it fair price, but the problem with this fair price is that it was below the profit margin for the people who produced these goods.
Right.
So the companies started to produce goods that they were obliged to sell at a lesser money that they were produced. So companies started getting into bankruptcy, and Venezuelan economy always have been an importer economy because we have never been a big manufacturer country. We always have imported everything we have needed. So since Hugo Chavez's government and Maduro's government, they started to destroy the little industry we had, the little employers that were fabricating goods and here in Venezuela, they were forced to shut down their fabrics. They were forced to flee Venezuela because they just couldn't maintain their businesses anymore.
Right.
Also, people from farms, people from several kinds of industries were expropriated. That exists.
I don't know. I don't know what.
Hello?
Maybe explain a little more.
Like the government says, okay, this farm produces sugarcane, and sugarcane is a product that is it's a highly demanded product here in Venezuela, and we as government think your farm isn't producing enough for our needs, so we are taking your fabric. We're gonna give you. We're taking your farm. We're gonna give you some money in return, but your farm is now ours.
Yeah,
okay.
The government did that with a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Expropriated was the right word.
Exactly. Yeah, they
Yeah, like-
expropriated a lot of farms, a lot of companies, a lot of industries. For example, we had one main house communications provider, just like Verizon or T-Mobile. Here in Venezuela was called CanTV. My mom actually had shares in that company until the government expropriated it. We had like 2003, 4, 5. We had like decent internet speeds. We didn't have problems with our cellular signal. We didn't have problems with communications at all. Now, since the government expropriated CanTV, they failed to maintain the infrastructure that CanTV needed to provide their service, and now our internet, for example, I have a 6 megabytes per second internet speed, and
Yeah.
I can only download at 100 kilobytes per second.
Okay.
Ugh.
I'm glad
yeah,
we can hear you.
It's
and
horrible.
I'm glad we can hear you and see you pretty well right now.
Yeah.
You can hear me and see me pretty well right now because I'm at the friend's house using their Wi-Fi because I don't have internet in my house since 1 month. I have been internetless for 1 month.
Wow, that's I think without internet for a month, I'm surprised you're still alive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just hop from a friend's house to another friend's house so I can use their Wi-Fi all the time. And I go to the office.
It's almost important
you
as
asked
food.
me, yeah, you asked me a while ago why I kept going to the streets, regardless of the dangers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of doing so, and I think the international community has to see what's happening in Venezuela. Even Venezuelans have to see what's happening here. We could be talking like all night long. There are so many problems Venezuela have that I could share with you, that I could tell to you. And one of these problems is Conatel. Conatel is a government organization that regulates all the radio wave frequencies. They regulate the TV channels, they regulate radio channels, and they regulate cable TV. They give the media. They give media concessions to channels that want to work. That wants to work in Venezuela, and since from some years to now, these concessions haven't been renewed. And the problem is that they don't renew them because they don't want to, because they have they are like they. Let me just think about Conatel says to the media that if they don't share with the viewers what they want them to share, their concessions won't be renewed. For example, I work for news channels, and in 2004, the first day of protests, the 12th of February, a guy was killed by one of these collectives, and my partner took the picture of the guy, of the corpse of the guy, like seconds after he was shot, and it was put on the air right away. And our channel was in the was a cable channel, a paid channel, and not all the country could see it, but a lot of people who paid cable TV could see it, and these people started to, I don't know, make noise in social media, and the next day, on February 13th, our channel was put out of the air.
Wow.
So now we just air through internet. We just work through our social media.
So did they send you any contact or email or anything to explain why they shut it down?
They said it. They said let me ask my partner exactly what they said, because I want to say exactly what they said.
Yeah.
Mire, Rafa, está afuera. Chila, Rafa está aquí. Mira, ¿cuál fue la excusa del gobierno para sacar NTN del aire? Que no sea que eran unos antiimperialistas.
Que hacían terrorismo audiovisual.
Terrorismo
Que
audiovisual.
manipulaban el mensaje.
Incitaban al odio y a la violencia, eso fue. Okay, so the excuse the government said is that our transmissions incitated violence and incitated rage between Venezuelan citizens.
Oh, like incited violence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, it isn't so far from truth, because yeah, if you are watching the TV and you see one student get shot down by some civil guy armed by the government, obviously you would want to, I don't know, you would be mad,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, from that day we have been airing our transmissions through social media, and the problem is a lot of channels have been put out of the air. One of the most renowned cases was the case of Caracas Radio Television, RCTV in Spanish. Mira, RCTV lo sacaron en 2007, ¿no? This was this channel was broke down on 2007, and all the employers from this channel were fired, and a lot of their talents fled the country. And from that day, we started saying that Venezuelan government wasn't so respectful of civil rights,
Right.
Especially the liberty of expression, right?
Right.
And after what happened with NTN 24, it was like National Constituent Assembly. Se llama National Constituent Assembly. And from that moment, we knew we weren't dealing with a fair government.
Let me ask you
From
this.
the moment our CTV was taken out of the air.
Let me ask you this, because I know you've been preoccupied a little bit in Venezuela, of course, but right now in the United States, there's also this debate going on right now about the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. And you were just saying that you once you saw the government start to infringe on those rights, that it became a big deal for you, and you understood that it was something that you thought was an injustice. So let me ask you why you think that the freedom of expression is an important thing.
Freedom of expression is very, very important thing, because it allows communicators like me to spread the truth of what's happening in some place. For example, right now in this era, in the 21st century, if something is not on the news, it's just like it didn't happen. If I don't know, if there's a forest and one tree falls, does it sound?
Right.
Exactly. So for the media, it happens just like that. So, for example, if this is true, if in a hospital there are not enough resources to treat the patients, if in a hospital there are no, I don't know, dialysis chambers for people who has diseases that need a dialysis chamber, if a hospital has their water tank is contaminated with some bacteria or whatever, it is the duty of the media to I don't know, give air to that problem and hope the government resolves it.
Right.
Because the government is responsible for that, right? But that, well, from the moment the government started messing around with freedom of expression, was the moment that the problems that Venezuela and the Venezuelans had stopped being informed, stopped being denounced.
Yeah.
So if the government controls all of the courts, if the government controls all of the juries, people can't just sue the government because they're gonna lose. And if people can't just go to the media and say that they can't sue the government because they're just gonna lose, we're like in a like going just let me arrange my idea.
Yeah.
So if people cannot denounce what is wrong, the other people cannot realize what's bad about the government.
Right.
If the government controls all the news channels in the open TV, not the cable TV, how can the people that cannot afford cable TV realize what is wrong with the government?
Yeah, so I know that the fake news was a problem under the Chavez ruling, but are you saying that like manufactured news and fake news is still a problem in Venezuela?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so is government controlled news still an issue today?
Yes, because these are not exact ciphers, but approximately an 80% of Venezuelan population is a population of straits D and E, basically poor people. This 80% of the population doesn't have access, or at least not many of them have access to cable TV. So they rely on the official news channels to get informed and to know what's happening. So, for example, in this march, in this mother of all marches, the government just said there were like a bunch of teenagers wanting to destroy the city, and it wasn't that.
Yeah.
And the cable news media knew it wasn't that and informed what was actually happening. But the government informed the whole country.
So you, as a journalist, I mean, is your media ever threatened by the government, or is it ever spun in what you're trying to report?
Besides of getting pulled out of the air, no. But for example, we are recommended not to carry our credentials or official NTN credentials with us, because if some colectivo takes us and they see, oh, it's NTN 24, they will like, I don't know what they would do to us, because they really hate us.
Wow.
We have made some reportages about them, about what they do, and they just don't like the truth to be heard.
Have you ever been threatened?
Yeah. The last 16th of July, there were some elections, but called by the people, called by Venezuelan opposition, and they in Venezuela there is an institution called the CNE, the National Electoral Council. That is they have the duty of taking care of all elections in Venezuela. And Venezuelan opposition strongly believes that the CNE is corrupted, that is fraud, makes frauds. And recently, in the last elections, the ones from the 30th of July, there were some irregularities with those elections. And even in Smartmatic, there was a company, there was on church, there was that had like the contract to put the voting machines in all Venezuelan territory. They said there were some irregularities. So to avoid this, the Venezuelan opposition called for elections 15 days earlier, at the 16th of July. These elections were called by the opposition, were organized by the people, and were not automatized. In these elections, people elected. They didn't want a new constitution. People asked the national army to stand in favor of Venezuelan people, and the thing that happened was that the Venezuelan opposition got 7,100,000 votes. What happened 15 days afterwards? The constitution called for elections. They didn't let anyone from any reporter or any journalist to get near any election center near 500 meter. They didn't. They didn't let any person from the media to get closer than 500 meters. That would be like one. Let me see. 3 meters is 10 feet.
Yeah.
So it would be like
a couple soccer fields.
What?
Like a couple soccer fields.
Yeah. So I wanted to report that, but for example, when I went to an election center, they didn't let me get near it, and from far you could see there was no one assisting. We got voice notes from several mayors of officialist-led cities that were calling people to vote because as they said, they didn't have enough votes to win the elections. But at the end, we were receiving these voice notes like at 2, 3, 4 p.m. Near the end of the election that ended like 5 or 6 p.m. And at 10 in the night, they just announced they had 8 million voters. And it was like, okay, this is suspicious. This is kind of suspicious, but I don't know, let's give some room for doubt. The next day, Smartmatic, the company that was that had the contract to put the machines to so the people could vote, said there was some irregularities, and they said the results were approximately 1 to 2 millions defaced. I mean, it could be 1 to 2 millions less votes than they said they had.
Oh wow!
And yeah, and some unconfirmed sources from inside the CNE, the National Electoral Council, said they actually got no more than 3 million votes. So people don't have any trust in this entity anymore.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, Ruben, I know you're getting low on time, but I just wanted to ask you.
Yeah. No, don't worry. I have a lot of time.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, I wanted to wrap up a little bit. This might be a big question. It's a kind of a 3-part question.
Okay.
So, what's next for you? what do you think is next for Venezuela, and what do you hope is next for Venezuela?
Well, what's next for me? That depends on what happens with Venezuela.
Yeah.
In September, I should start classes again, and if everything goes smoothly, my university should still be there imparting classes. But one of the propositions for the new constitution was that private education wouldn't exist anymore. I study in a private university. So
Wow.
if they uh, they change some law or they say something about private education, I don't know what would happen for me. But my plan B would be go somewhere else, maybe Colombia, maybe Ecuador, Argentina, Chile. I don't know. There are several countries that are taking Venezuelans right now. I would be there like 1 year or 6 months, just like saving money, and then I would travel all the world. That's what I want. That's what I want.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, if nothing happens, I would just graduate and do that.
Yeah.
What do I think is next for Venezuela? Sadly, my point of view is not so optimistical. Yeah, because the new since the elections in 30th of July, there is a new organism called the National Constituent Assembly. This organism is made to create a new constitution, but in the time while this organism is acting, is they are over all of the other powers. They are over the presidential power. They are over the Congress, and to put it like that, it's like the National Constituent Assembly is the highest power in Venezuela right now. So they have the right to do anything they want. So if they decide to do what was proposed for the new constitution, it will be very sad because it will be the legalization of Venezuelan socialism. Because the proposals, I'm just gonna tell you some of them. One of the proposals is to regulate the media, to regulate even social media, and they put China as an example.
Oh,
Oh, my
no.
Yeah, another. I don't know if you have heard of all the rights the army has violated by killing people, by arresting people without warrant, by searching houses without warrant. The new constituent proposes to give more power to the army so they can do that and more without any supervision. Or, for example, with this new constituent, if you are if you are suspected of terrorism, they will have the right to search your house without a warrant, and they have been doing so. But yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. Like if they go to your door and they just knock and say, just open the door, you ask, do you have a warrant? And they say no. And yeah, you can say whatever you want. You can say, okay, you cannot enter my home, but they would just bring down the door anyways.
Yikes.
Yeah, and so I'm not that optimistical. I think Venezuelan people is not as mad as we thought they were, because they were not anymore. They are not anymore in the streets. They are not going out anymore. I know it's dangerous. I know it's hard. I've been there, but I have seen a lot of courageous boys, a lot of courageous girls, a lot of courageous men and women who had fought for Venezuela, and now I ask myself, where are these boys? Where are these girls? Where are these men, this woman, this elder who were fighting for us? Where are they? Some of them are in prison, and some of them just gave up, and that's what I think is very sad. So I don't know. A lot of people is hoping that somehow miraculously everything like gets better. Some people are hoping the U.S. actually invades us. I don't want that. I don't want a war. I don't. Some people are hoping there is a
Why are
civil
people
war
hoping that?
because I don't know. I think, and this is just a personal opinion, I think they want someone else to resolve their problems.
Yeah.
I think they just don't realize that if you want something to change, you have to change it yourself.
Yeah.
And what was the last question? Sorry.
Oh, what do you hope happens? What would be the ideal future for Venezuela in your opinion?
Well, the ideal future. Wow. um. Well, I'm just yeah. This will sound like a movie, but yeah, it's what should happen. What I hope it happens, even though it's fairly impossible that this happens. I hope that people just start giving a shit and just go out of their homes and just march to fucking president's door and fucking
Yeah.
kick his butt. Yeah, of course. And just kill all them fucking colectivos of shit. Yeah, those guys have to die.
All right. I hope that happens too.
Yeah.
But what
to
about
finish-
after that? But what about after that?
After that, well, Venezuela is it's a very I don't know, special country, and people here are very special. There are a lot of entrepreneurship here in Venezuela, and there is a lot of money because of the oil, and that's gonna be always like that until we find another power source. But I think after this happens, maybe we have to just go the deepest we can go until we can rise again. But I think when the country rises, when the economy restores itself, a lot of people, not just Venezuelans, but also people from outside, are gonna start investing here. Are gonna start starting businesses here. Are gonna start recovering the economy, and this country, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years will be a lot more advanced and a lot more developed than we are right now.
Yeah.
I think actually that if Chavez had done what he should have, because in his period of time, from 2000 from 2000 to 2010, the oil barrel was in the highest price ever, above $100 all the time. If Chavez had took this chance, the chance this oil barrel price had gave him, he could have made Venezuela in something like Dubai. If you see pictures from Dubai from the 90s, there was just desert. If you see pictures from Dubai right now, there is like a lot of skyscrapers and cool things.
Right.
I think Venezuela could be that.
Well, awesome.
You were asking me if I was menaced by colectivos,
Yeah.
and I started to tell you about the elections. I was going to tell you one anecdote, and this is gonna be the last.
Yeah.
In 16th of July, I was in Katia. Katia is a slum here in Caracas, And in Katia, there was one of the biggest election centers. And in front of the election center, there was in a church. There were gathered around, I don't know, like 5,000 oppositions, people from Venezuela opposition, and they were chanting, they were screaming for freedom, and they were just singing and celebrating these elections. And some people from the officialism, some people, uh, government followers, were nearby. Like there were like 5,000 opposition people from opposition, and like just 100 from officials. And in the middle of them, there was the police, and opposition. The people from opposition were screaming things to the people of officialism. They were screaming, I don't know, we want freedom. They were screaming, you don't like us because we're winning and stuff like that. And something very odd happened. From one side of the police came like a bunch of motorcycles, and they did like a round. They went back to the street, and they went out of the motorcycles, stepped down of the motorcycles, and walked towards the position crowd, and started firing fire guns to the air, like just shooting to the air. Pa, 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 pa. And people started screaming, started running. It was madness, completely madness. At that time, I was at a live streaming. My iPhone got heat up, and it turned off. And at the time, I was just okay. I cannot transmit right now. I have to just take care of my life. So I took cover behind a kiosk that was on one of the sidewalks, and I was at the side of the police, and all the opposition fled, and there were just remaining the police, the collectivos, and the people from the officials, the people, the likers of the officialism. And my partner and I were behind police lines, and one guy just stepped in front of me. One guy, like, I don't know, I am like 5'6". He would be like 6'2". He was in front of me, and he just tapped my chest, and he said, "Take care of yourself, kiddo, because we know who are you." And I was like, "Fuck, okay, I have to run away from here." And my partner just told me, just chill, let's get some motor taxis and go. And then afterwards, a guy from the National Bolivarian Army took his cell phone out, and he started like recording my face. And I was like, "Why are you filming me? Stop filming me! Don't do that!" And it was just like covering my face, and the guy just won't stop. And I thought that day that something bad was going to happen to me, and I took a bike and just left. But then today, I went to the Congress, because there was some event there. There was a session, and a girl told me, "Ruben, you have to be careful because they know who are you, and they want to have you." Say it like that. Well,
Wow.
I hope nothing bad happens to me.
Jesus. Man, Ruben, dude, stay safe.
Yeah, sure, man.
That's a
Of
scary.
course.
That's a scary story. But
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
yeah,
But not as scary as the guns that those guys had
right.
that day in Katia.
Yeah.
They killed 3 people that day.
Yeah. Well, I know you're really passionate about your work, so I want to be able to give people a good place where they can find your work online. Can you give us your Instagram name and all that stuff, and other places where people can find your stuff?
My name is Ruben Sevilla. It's do you need to spell it?
Sure.
It's Ruben, and last name is Sev, as in Venezuela, ILLA.
And that's your
It's like
that's your
city in
Instagram
Spain.
name.
Yeah, and my Instagram name is just name and last name just all together, Ruben Sevilla. And I had a link to my webpage there in my Instagram. I think I don't have it anymore because I don't know. I think I took it away, but I'm gonna upload it soon.
Okay. Perfect.
And I have a Flickr account. It's also by my name, but my latest work is in my Instagram.
Okay. All right, well, Ruben, thanks so much for joining us, man. I'm so interested to hear your perspective and hear everything you had to say, and I know Tommy is too. So
No, thank you for reminding me, guys.
yeah, absolutely. Well, if you ever come to the United States, let me know. If you ever come to Southern California to visit your cousin,
Oh yeah, sure,
me know.
definitely.
Yeah, we'll go.
When I go back to San Diego to visit my brother, we'll surely, I don't know, hang out together or surf or anything.
Yeah, sounds great. Tommy, I think you might be muted on your channel, on your there you go.
Right.
Yeah. So I couldn't hear you. Tommy, did you want to say anything before we sign off?
Yeah, it was a pleasure speaking to you, Ruben. If you ever in New York
Hold on.
City-
Hey, 1 second. Ruben, can you mute your microphone for a second?
Can I what?
Can you press mute really quick on your microphone for a second?
If I can, what?
It's okay.
Hello?
Okay, Tommy, go ahead.
Mute my microphone? Microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Ruben, it was an absolute pleasure getting your insight and speaking with you. If you're ever in New York City, definitely hit me up. I want to continue this conversation further. It was just an absolute pleasure.
Cool. You can unmute it. There you go. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Tommy.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure for me to give this little insight about Venezuela to you guys and to all the people that are going to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
There is a lot that remains to be told, but I guess you guys, I don't know, can just go into CNN, BBC, NTN 24, and just watch it for yourself.
Yeah.
All right.
We will. All right, Ruben, stay safe out there, okay?
Thank you, man. You too.
All right.
Thanks, Ruben.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.